There comes a moment in life when you must stop explaining yourself. Stop announcing what you are about to do. Stop trying to make people understand your vision. Stop defending your silence to those who only respected you when you were constantly available. Because the moment you begin to focus on yourself, something strange happens. The people who ignored your struggle begin to notice your absence. The people who doubted your potential begin to watch your progress. The people who once felt comfortable underestimating you begin to wonder what changed. But the truth is simple. Nothing changed about them. You changed your direction. You stopped performing for an audience that never intended to applaud you. You stopped wasting your energy trying to prove your worth to people who had already decided not to see it. And you discovered one of the most powerful principles of human behavior. The less you explain, the more people are forced to observe. Most people live their lives in public. They announce their goals before they have earned them. They reveal their plans before they have built the strength to protect them. They speak about the person they are becoming, hoping that the words will somehow create the transformation. But words are cheap. Anyone can say they are changing. Anyone can promise discipline. Anyone can announce a new beginning. The world is full of people who are constantly talking about what they will do. And then there are the few who disappear. They become quiet. They stop seeking permission. They stop asking whether others approve. They take their attention away from the crowd and place it upon themselves. And while everyone else is speaking, they are building. This is where your power begins. The first rule: stop explaining yourself. The moment you begin to change, people will start asking questions. Why are you different now? Why are you quieter? Why do you no longer respond the way you used to? Why are you making different decisions? And if you are not careful, you will fall into the trap of explaining yourself to everyone. You will begin defending your choices to people who were never responsible for your life in the first place. You will explain why you need distance. You will explain why you are focused on your goals. You will explain why you no longer tolerate certain behavior. You will explain why you have changed. And slowly, without realizing it, your life will become a courtroom where every decision requires a defense. But you must understand something. Not everyone who asks for an explanation deserves one. There is a difference between communicating with people who genuinely care about you and constantly defending yourself to people who simply want access to your reasoning. Some people do not ask questions because they want to understand you. They ask because they want to find a weakness in your decision. They want to know what you are thinking so they can challenge it. They want to know what you fear so they can use it. They want to know where you are going so they can influence your direction before you arrive. The more you explain, the more information you give away. When you announce every plan, people learn your intentions before you have the strength to complete them. When you reveal every insecurity, people learn where you are vulnerable. When you explain every emotional reaction, people learn exactly which buttons to press. And once people understand the mechanism behind your decisions, they can begin to manipulate the mechanism. This is why silence is sometimes more powerful than explanation. You do not have to tell everyone why you are becoming distant. You do not have to announce that you are entering a new phase of your life. You do not have to convince people that you are serious about your goals. You do not need to make a speech about your transformation. The people who respect you will observe your actions. The people who do not respect you will question them regardless of how perfectly you explain yourself. You can give someone the most honest explanation in the world, and they may still choose to misunderstand you because misunderstanding you serves their purpose. Some people are comfortable with the old version of you, the version that was always available, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that answered every message immediately, the version that accepted excuses, the version that could be easily influenced. When you begin to change, your transformation becomes uncomfortable for people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. And when they feel that access disappearing, they may demand an explanation. They may accuse you of becoming arrogant. They may say you have changed. They may tell you that you are acting differently. They may remind you of the person you used to be, as if your past behavior has created a permanent contract that prevents you from evolving. But you are not obligated to remain the same person simply because someone became comfortable with your old weaknesses. You are allowed to outgrow your habits. You are allowed to change your priorities. You are allowed to become more selective with your time. You are allowed to protect your peace without writing a detailed explanation for everyone who dislikes the new boundaries. The need to explain yourself often comes from insecurity. You fear that if people misunderstand you, they will judge you. You fear that if they judge you, they may reject you. So you rush to correct every misunderstanding. You answer every accusation. You defend every decision. You attempt to control the image people have of you. But this is an impossible task. People will interpret you according to their own experiences, their own fears, and their own interests. A confident person may be called arrogant. A quiet person may be called weak. A disciplined person may be called boring. A person with boundaries may be called selfish. You can spend your entire life trying to correct these interpretations, and by the time you finish, you will have no energy left to actually live the life you were trying to defend when you stop explaining yourself yourself, you begin to reclaim control over your attention. You no longer allow every opinion to pull you into a debate. You no longer feel the need to prove that your intentions are good. You no longer chase people who have already decided to see you negatively. You understand that your actions, repeated consistently over time, will reveal more about you than any explanation ever could. And while others continue demanding answers, you begin moving in silence, protecting the plans that are still becoming, the discipline that is still forming, and the identity that is still taking shape. The second rule: withdraw your attention. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess, yet most people give it away as if it were worthless. They give it to every notification, every argument, every insult, every rumor, every person who suddenly decides to withdraw their attention from them. Their minds are constantly pulled in different directions, controlled by the behavior of others. Someone ignores them and they spend hours wondering why. Someone criticizes them and they replay the words repeatedly. Someone posts something online and they begin comparing their life to it. Someone provokes them and they immediately react. Without realizing it, they allow other people to control the direction of their thoughts. This is why withdrawing your attention is one of the most powerful forms of self-control. You do not have to respond to everything that demands a reaction from you. Not every message deserves an answer. Not every insult deserves a defense. Not every disagreement deserves your energy. Not every person who walks away deserves to be chased. There are people who will deliberately create confusion simply to see whether they still have access to your mind. They will provoke you, disappear, return, criticize, and create emotional tension because they have learned that your attention is easy to obtain. The moment you stop giving it to them, their influence begins to weaken. Attention is a form of energy. Whatever you constantly focus on begins to occupy space inside you. If you spend your days thinking about people who disrespect you, then even when they are not physically present, they are still living inside your mind. If you constantly focus on proving someone wrong, then that person still controls your thoughts. If you spend every day wondering whether someone regrets losing you, then your life is still revolving around their reaction. You may have removed them from your surroundings, but you have not removed them from your mind. True withdrawal means taking your attention back. It means refusing to allow someone else's behavior to determine the quality of your day. If someone wants to misunderstand you, let them. If someone wants to gossip, let them. If someone wants to create drama, allow them to perform for an audience that is no longer present. You do not need to enter every battlefield simply because someone has called your name. There is a great difference between being aware and being obsessed. Awareness allows you to understand what is happening. Obsession forces you to repeatedly return to it. You observe the behavior once, recognize the pattern, and make a decision, but the undisciplined mind continues returning to the same situation, searching for new answers in an old problem. Why did they do that? What did they mean? What are they thinking? Will they come back? Do they regret it? These questions can consume years of your life if you allow them to, and often the answer you are searching for is not hidden. Their behavior already told you enough. You simply do not want to accept what it revealed. This is where your attention becomes powerful. Instead of spending your mental energy trying to decode people who have already shown you their priorities, you redirect that energy toward yourself. You focus on your work, your health, your knowledge, your discipline, your future. You begin asking a different question. What could I build if I stopped giving so much of my mind to people who are not building my life with me? The answer is often uncomfortable. You begin to realize how much time you have wasted monitoring people who are not monitoring you. You realize how much energy you have spent trying to be understood by people who never made an effort to understand you. You realize that some of your strongest emotions were created by people who were not even thinking about you in that moment. This is why you must become selective with your attention. Do not give your deepest thoughts to shallow distractions. Do not give your emotional energy to people who only appear when they want something. Do not allow temporary events to control permanent decisions. A moment of anger can make you send a message that damages your dignity. A moment of loneliness can make you return to a situation you worked hard to escape. A moment of insecurity can make you seek approval from people who have already demonstrated that they cannot give you peace. Withdraw your attention before your emotions make decisions for you. The person who controls your attention has influence over your inner world. If someone can make you angry whenever they want, they possess a certain form of power over you. If someone can make you desperate for their approval, they possess power over you. If someone can destroy your concentration simply by appearing, they still occupy a position in your mind. You do not need to fight them for that position. You simply need to stop giving it to them. When you withdraw your attention, you do not become cold. You become deliberate. You begin to understand that peace is not found by controlling every person around you. Peace is found by deciding what deserves access to your mind and what does not. Your attention becomes a gate, and not everyone is allowed to walk through it. Some people will continue shouting from the outside, but their voices lose power when you stop opening the door. And while the world continues demanding your reaction, you begin placing your attention where it can actually produce something, into the work that strengthens you, the knowledge that sharpens you, the discipline that changes you, and the future that is still waiting for the energy you have been giving away. Third rule: build in secret. There is a certain power in working without being seen. In a world where people announce every intention, document every step, and seek approval before before the result even exists, the person who quietly builds becomes difficult to measure. While others are busy describing the future they want, you are quietly creating it. While they are announcing their goals, you are developing the discipline required to reach yours. While they are searching for applause, you are learning how to continue without it. This is why you should become careful about revealing your plans too early. The moment you tell everyone what you are going to do, something changes inside you. You receive attention before you have earned the result. People praise your ambition. They tell you that you are going to succeed. They admire your vision. For a brief moment, you experience the emotional reward that should have come after the work was completed. Your mind receives a small taste of achievement simply because you announced the intention. And this can weaken the hunger required to complete it. You begin to feel as if you have already moved forward when in reality nothing has changed. The goal is still distant. The work is still unfinished. The discipline is still untested. But because you have spoken about it, you feel a strange sense of progress. You have told the world who you are becoming, and now you begin to feel pressure to maintain the image rather than do the difficult work required to become that person. This is why silence can protect ambition. A goal in its early stages is fragile. It needs time, concentration, and protection from unnecessary opinions. The moment you reveal it, everyone has something to say. One person tells you that it is impossible. Another tells you that you should choose a safer path. Someone else reminds you of your past failures. Another person begins comparing your progress to someone else's. Suddenly, the goal that once belonged entirely to you becomes a public discussion. And when too many people gain access to a dream before it becomes reality, they can influence your relationship with it. You begin questioning yourself because someone else questioned you. You begin changing your direction because someone else disapproved. You begin seeking permission to continue. The vision that once came from within you becomes dependent on external reactions. Build before you reveal. Let the early stages remain yours. When you are learning, do not worry about appearing inexperienced. When you are starting, do not worry about appearing small. When you are failing, do not invite an audience to judge every mistake. There is a certain freedom in being unknown while you are developing. You can make mistakes without having to explain them. You can change direction without announcing that your original plan failed. You can experiment without the pressure of maintaining an image. This is one of the greatest advantages of working quietly. You are allowed to be a beginner. You are allowed to be uncertain. You are allowed to fail privately and return stronger. People often want to display the finished product, but they hide the process that created it. They want to show confidence without revealing the years of doubt. They want to show success without revealing the failures. They want to appear disciplined without showing the mornings when they had to force themselves to continue. But real transformation is usually invisible for a long time. A seed does not become a tree because someone watches it. It grows in darkness. Its roots develop beneath the surface before anyone sees the evidence. The same is true of your own development. There will be periods when it seems as though nothing is happening. You will work, study, practice, sacrifice, and continue while the outside world sees no dramatic change. This is the stage where most people quit. They become impatient because there is no immediate recognition. They begin wondering whether the effort is worth it because no one is noticing. They reveal their plans simply to receive encouragement. They search for validation because the results are not yet visible. But if you can continue during the period when no one is watching, you develop something far more valuable than attention. You develop self-command. You learn to work because the work matters, not because someone is applauding. You learn to remain disciplined even when the excitement disappears. You learn to continue when the results are slow. You learn that motivation is temporary, but a private commitment can survive long after motivation has disappeared. The less you speak about what you are building, the more energy remains for the building itself. Every conversation about your goals consumes a small amount of attention. Every explanation invites an opinion. Every announcement creates expectations. Sometimes the best way to protect your focus is to say less and work more. Let people think you are doing nothing. Let them underestimate the amount of effort happening beneath the surface. You do not need to correct every assumption. You do not need to prove that you are progressing. You do not need to show the world every step of your transformation. The people who only respect visible results will eventually see them. The people who never believed in you may eventually notice, but by then the work will already be done, the discipline will already be built, and the person you were trying to become will no longer depend on anyone's permission. The fourth rule: do not chassis a patient. One of the most powerful traps in life is the need to be seen, approved of, and recognized by other people. You accomplish something and immediately you look around to see who noticed. You improve yourself and secretly you hope certain people will regret underestimating you. You become more successful, more disciplined, more attractive, more confident, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you still wonder whether the people who once doubted you are watching. But if your entire transformation is designed to make someone else notice you, then they still control you. You may have changed your appearance, your habits, your lifestyle, and your circumstances, but psychologically you are still orbiting around them. You are still asking whether they saw your progress. You are still wondering whether they regret losing access to you. You are still waiting for the message, the reaction, the acknowledgement that will finally prove that your transformation was worth it. This is not freedom. It is dependence disguised as self-improvement. The desire for validation is powerful because it gives you a temporary feeling of importance. Someone praises you and for a moment you feel secure. Someone compliments your work and you feel capable. Someone admires your discipline and you feel as if you have finally become the person you wanted to be. But the problem is that external validation is never permanent. The moment you receive it, you begin fearing its disappearance. You become dependent on the next compliment, the next reaction, the next sign that people still approve of you. And once your confidence depends on other people, they gain influence over your emotional state. If they praise you, you feel powerful. If they ignore you, you question yourself. If they criticize you, you become defensive. If they withdraw their approval, you begin changing yourself to get it back. Slowly, your identity becomes a reflection of whatever the outside world is giving you. This is why you must learn to improve without needing an audience. There is a difference between sharing your success and needing your success to be seen. There is a difference between enjoying recognition and depending on it. You can appreciate praise without allowing praise to become the source of your identity. You can accept criticism without allowing criticism to destroy your confidence. The goal is not to become someone who feels nothing. The goal is to become someone whose sense of worth cannot be easily controlled by the reactions of others. Ask yourself honestly, if nobody ever knew what you accomplished, would you still do it? If nobody praised your discipline, would you still remain disciplined? If the person you wanted to impress never saw your transformation, would you still transform? These questions reveal your true motives. Many people believe they are chasing success, but what they are really chasing is recognition. They want the money because they want people to respect them. They want the body because they want people to desire them. They want the achievement because they want people to regret doubting them. They want the lifestyle because they want to prove that they escaped the version of themselves others once looked down upon. But when your motivation depends on proving something to someone else, you are giving that person control over your direction. You may be working hard, but they are still influencing the reason behind your work. Real growth begins when you stop needing your enemies to witness your victory. You stop imagining their reaction. You stop checking whether they noticed. You stop building a life that functions as a message directed towards someone from your past. You begin building because you genuinely want to become stronger, wiser, more capable, and more independent. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. You no longer need to post every achievement. You no longer need to announce every improvement. You no longer need to make your success obvious to people who once rejected you. You begin to understand that the greatest revenge against being underestimated is not making someone regret their opinion of you. It is reaching a point where their opinion no longer matters. There will always be people who do not recognize your value. Some will see your progress and remain silent. Some will watch you improve and pretend not to notice. Some will acknowledge your success only when it becomes impossible to deny. If you wait for every person to finally admit that they were wrong, you may spend your entire life waiting. Let them keep their opinions. You do not need to force them to change their minds. Your life is not a courtroom, and you are not required to present evidence to every person who doubts you. The time you spend trying to convince people that you are worthy is time taken away from becoming worthy in your own eyes. There is a quiet strength in doing things that no one will ever applaud. Studying when no one knows. Saving money when no one sees the sacrifice. Practicing when no one believes you will succeed. Choosing discipline when nobody is there to reward you. These actions build a foundation that external validation cannot provide. When you stop chasing validation, your decisions become clearer. You stop asking what will impress people and start asking what will improve you. You stop choosing temporary attention and start choosing long-term strength. You stop performing a version of yourself for the world and begin developing a version of yourself that exists even when no one is watching. You become less interested in being admired and more interested in being capable, less interested in being noticed and more interested in becoming undeniable to yourself. The fifth rule, let people misunderstand you. One of the greatest forms of freedom is accepting that some people will never understand you. You can explain yourself perfectly and still be misunderstood. You can be honest and still be accused of lying. You can be loyal and still be called selfish. You can remain silent and still be called arrogant. You can offer kindness and still be suspected of having an agenda. The more you try to control the way everyone sees you, the more trapped you become inside the opinions of others. Most people spend far too much energy trying to manage their image. They want to be liked by everyone. They want their intentions to be understood. They want every misunderstanding corrected immediately. When someone forms the wrong opinion of them, they rush to explain. When someone criticizes them, they defend themselves. When someone spreads a false story, they feel compelled to respond. They believe that if they can just explain the truth clearly enough, everyone will finally see them accurately. But people do not always see you as you are. They see you through their own experiences, fears, insecurities, expectations, and desires. A person who is used to controlling others may see your boundaries as arrogance. A person who is accustomed to your constant availability may see your distance as betrayal. A person who is insecure may interpret your confidence as an attack. A person who benefits from your weakness may call your strength selfish. Their interpretation may have very little to do with your actual intentions. This is why you must become comfortable with being misunderstood. There are people who will never understand your decisions because they benefit from you making different ones. They may question why you are no longer available. They may accuse you of changing. They may tell you that you are not the same person anymore. And perhaps they are right. You are not the same person. That is the entire point of growth. You are allowed to change your standards. You are allowed to change your priorities. You are allowed to change the way you respond. You are allowed to change the people who have access to you. The version of you that tolerated certain behavior may no longer exist, and people who were comfortable with that version may feel threatened by its disappearance. They may attempt to pull you backward by reminding you of who you used to be. They may say that you have become distant. They may say that you think you are better than everyone else. They may accuse you of being cold simply because you no longer react the way they expect. You do not have to return to your old identity simply to make someone else comfortable. There is a difference between being genuinely wrong and being misunderstood. When you have made a mistake, you should have the strength to examine it. When you have hurt someone, you should have the maturity to take responsibility. But you should not confuse accountability with the endless need to prove your innocence to people committed to seeing you negatively. Some people do not want clarity, they want access. They ask why you changed because they want to know what they must say to make you return to the old version of yourself. They demand explanations because your silence makes them uncertain. They want to understand your thoughts because uncertainty makes them feel that they have lost control. You are not required to remove every uncertainty from someone else's mind. Let them wonder. Let them form their own conclusions. Let them believe what they want to believe. Your life does not become less true simply because someone else describes it incorrectly. This is difficult because the human mind naturally wants to be understood. We want people to recognize our intentions. We want our loyalty to be acknowledged. We want our sacrifices to be seen. We want the people we care about to know that we meant well. But the world does not always reward good intentions with accurate understanding. Sometimes you can do everything with sincerity and still be judged unfairly. Sometimes you can remain calm and still be accused of having an attitude. Sometimes you can leave a situation peacefully and still be called the villain by the people who created the chaos. You cannot control the story people tell about you after you leave. You can only control the truth of how you lived. The more secure you become in your own identity, the less desperate you become to correct every opinion. You stop chasing people who have misunderstood you. You stop writing long explanations to people who have already made their decision. You stop trying to force people to see the best in you. You realize that time reveals more than arguments ever could. A person may misunderstand your silence today and understand it years later. They may criticize your decision now and recognize its wisdom later. They may think you are foolish for walking away, only to discover that you were protecting yourself from something they could not see. But whether they ever understand is no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is to live in a way that you can respect. When you stop needing everyone to understand you, you become much harder to manipulate. Insults lose their power because you no longer feel compelled to defend yourself. Accusations lose their power because you no longer rush to prove your innocence. Misunderstandings lose their power because you no longer allow another person's perception to become your identity. You begin to understand that peace sometimes requires allowing people to believe the wrong thing about you while you continue walking in the right direction. The sixth rule: master the art of disappearing. There are moments in life when the most powerful thing you can do is become less available. Not because you hate people, not because you want to punish anyone, not because you are trying to create unnecessary mystery, but because constant availability teaches people to undervalue your presence. When you are always there, always responding, always ready to give your time, your attention, your energy, and your emotional support, people can begin to treat your presence as something automatic. And what people receive automatically, they often stop appreciating. This is why distance can be powerful. You do not need to disappear dramatically. You do not need to announce that you are leaving. You do not need to write a long message explaining that you are entering a new chapter. You can simply become less available. You can stop responding instantly. You can stop attending every conversation. You can stop being present in every situation that does not deserve your presence. Your absence begins to reveal what your availability was hiding. When you are constantly available, you may never discover who truly values you and who simply values what you provide. Some people do not miss you. They miss your attention. They miss your advice. They miss your emotional support. They miss the convenience of knowing that whenever they need something, you will be there. The moment you step back, the difference becomes visible. Some people will reach out because they genuinely care. Others will only appear because they have noticed that access has become more difficult. This distinction is important. When you are always available, everyone appears equally important. Distance separates the people who value your presence from the people who simply use it. But disappearing is not only about discovering other people's intentions, it is also about discovering your own. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, you can lose track of your thoughts. thoughts. The opinions of others become so loud that you can no longer hear your own instincts. You begin making decisions based on what will keep everyone comfortable. You accept invitations you do not want. You continue conversations that exhaust you. You remain in relationships that have already revealed their limitations. You become so focused on maintaining access to everyone else that you lose access to yourself. This is why solitude can be a form of recovery. When you step away, you begin to notice what you have been ignoring. You notice how tired you are. You notice how much time you have wasted. You notice how often you have said yes when you wanted to say no. You notice how many of your decisions were influenced by the fear of disappointing people. Distance creates clarity because it removes the constant pressure to perform. You no longer have to be entertaining. You no longer have to be available. You no longer have to explain your mood. You can simply exist without constantly responding to the expectations of others. This is especially important when you are trying to rebuild yourself. Growth requires concentration. You cannot constantly give your attention to everyone and expect to have enough left for your own transformation. Every person who has access to you has some influence over your time, your emotions, and your mental space. If you allow unlimited access, you create unlimited opportunities for distraction. Sometimes you need to close the doors, not permanently, but long enough to hear yourself think. The world may interpret your absence in different ways. Some will think you are angry. Some will assume you are arrogant. Some will believe you have changed. Some may even create stories about why you are no longer available. Let them. You do not need to return simply because someone has created a theory about your absence. There is a difference between abandoning people and protecting your energy. There is a difference between becoming cruel and becoming selective. You do not have to hate everyone to create distance from them. You do not have to wish anyone harm to decide that they no longer deserve constant access to your life. You can care about someone and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still refuse to return to the same environment. You can love people and still understand that their presence is not always good for your direction. This is a level of maturity many people never develop because they believe that caring requires constant availability. They believe that if they do not answer immediately, they are being rude. If they do not attend every event, they are being distant. If they need time alone, they are being selfish. But your life is not a public resource. Your time is not automatically owed to everyone who wants it. Your energy is not unlimited. The more you understand this, the more deliberate you become about where you place yourself. And when you become less available, something else happens. People begin to notice the difference between your presence and your absence. They realize that the attention they once assumed would always be there is no longer guaranteed. They may begin to appreciate what they previously ignored. They may begin to question why you are no longer responding to the same things. But the greatest benefit is not that other people notice you. The greatest benefit is that you begin noticing yourself again. You remember your goals. You return to your discipline. You reconnect with your ambitions. You begin building a life that does not depend on constantly being needed by other people. You discover that silence is not emptiness, solitude is not loneliness, and distance is not always rejection. Sometimes disappearing is simply the act of removing yourself from the noise long enough to become someone the noise can no longer control. The seventh rule, make yourself your main project. You've spent enough time studying other people, their behavior, their opinions, their messages, their moods, their betrayals, their approval, their rejection. You've spent enough time asking why someone changed, why someone ignored you, why someone left, why someone failed to appreciate you, and why certain people continue repeating the same patterns in your life. But there comes a moment when you must stop studying everyone else and begin studying yourself. This is where real transformation begins. Most people are fascinated by the weaknesses of others. They can identify manipulation, dishonesty, selfishness, and toxic behavior in everyone around them. They can explain exactly why someone else is failing. They can analyze the motives of friends, enemies, partners, coworkers, and strangers. But when it comes to examining themselves, their vision suddenly becomes unclear. They can see the patterns in everyone else, but not their own. You must become different. Make yourself the most important project of your life. This does not mean becoming selfish or believing that the world revolves around you. It means understanding that your life will never improve permanently until you are willing to examine the person responsible for your decisions. Ask yourself difficult questions. Where do you lose control? What situations repeatedly trigger you? Why do you keep returning to people who have already shown you their true nature? Why do you continue asking for respect from people who benefit from your lack of boundaries? Why do you allow temporary loneliness to make permanent decisions for you? Why do you keep sacrificing your peace to maintain relationships that only survive when you are the one doing all the work? These questions may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the beginning of self-awareness. You cannot improve what you refuse to examine. Many people want a better life without becoming a better decision maker. They want healthier relationships without changing the way they choose people. They want more respect without changing the way they respond to disrespect. They want more discipline without changing the habits that keep them weak. They want new results while protecting the old version of themselves, but life does not reward intentions. It responds to patterns. If you repeatedly make the same decisions, you will repeatedly create similar outcomes. If you continue giving access to people who disrespect you, you cannot be surprised when disrespect becomes a regular part of your life. If you continue avoiding difficult work, you cannot expect confidence to appear from nowhere. If you continue blaming everyone else, you give yourself no reason to change. This is why self-examination is so powerful. The moment you stop asking, why are they doing this to me, and begin asking, why do I keep allowing this into my life? You begin reclaiming control. This does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. Other people are responsible for their own behavior. People can lie, manipulate, betray, and hurt you. But you are responsible for what you do after you recognize the pattern. You are responsible for the boundaries you set. You are responsible for the lessons you refuse to learn. You are responsible for the access you continue giving. You are responsible for the habits you continue repeating. Your life changes when you stop waiting for other people to become better and start becoming better at choosing. You do not need to control everyone around you. You need to become more selective about who receives access to you. You do not need to convince people to respect you. You need to stop rewarding people who repeatedly disrespect you. You do not need to force someone to appreciate your value. You need to stop placing your value in the hands of people who cannot recognize it. This is the difference between trying to control the world and learning to control yourself. Your emotions are powerful, but they should not be your master. Anger can tell you that something is wrong, but it should not decide your next action. Loneliness can tell you that you desire connection, but it should not force you back into destructive situations. Fear can warn you of danger, but it should not prevent you from growing. The goal is not to eliminate emotion. The goal is to understand it. Study your reactions. Notice what triggers you. Notice the moments when you become desperate for approval. Notice when you begin chasing someone who has withdrawn. Notice when your ego demands that you win an argument that no longer matters. Every reaction contains information about you. Your weaknesses are not merely obstacles. They are instructions. They reveal where your work is needed. The person who understands this stops viewing self-improvement as a temporary project. They begin treating their character discipline, judgment, and emotional control as lifelong responsibilities. They read to sharpen their thinking. They reflect to understand their patterns. They practice discipline when nobody is watching. They become more careful about what they consume, who they trust, and where they invest their energy, because they understand that the quality of their life is often determined by the quality of their decisions. When you make yourself your main project, you stop needing constant distraction. You become interested in your own evolution. Every day becomes an opportunity to become slightly more disciplined, slightly more aware, slightly more patient, and slightly more difficult to manipulate. You begin measuring progress by your behavior rather than by other people's reactions. You are no longer asking whether everyone likes you. You are asking whether you respect yourself. You are no longer asking whether someone regrets losing you. You are asking whether you have stopped losing yourself for people who never valued you. You are no longer asking whether the world recognizes your potential. You are asking whether you are actually doing the work required to fulfill it. And as your attention turns inward, you begin discovering that the greatest project you will ever build is not your reputation, your image, or the opinion others have of you, but the person you become when nobody is watching. The 8 rule. You let your rocks speak. There is a time to speak and there is a time to remain silent. Most people speak too early. They announce their intentions before they have developed the discipline to achieve them. They tell everyone about the person they are becoming before they have made the sacrifices required to become that person. They talk about success, confidence, discipline, ambition, and transformation, hoping that the words themselves will create the reality. But words are easy. Anyone can make a promise. Anyone can announce a new beginning. Anyone can tell the world that they are changing. The real question is whether they can continue when nobody is watching, when the excitement disappears, when the results are slow, and when there is no applause waiting at the end of the day. This is where results become more powerful than words. You do not need to tell people you have changed when your behavior has changed. You do not need to tell people you are disciplined when your habits prove it. You do not need to tell people you are confident when you no longer beg for approval. You do not need to tell people you are successful when your results are impossible to ignore. A person can argue with your words, they can question your intentions, they can doubt your promises, but results are much harder to debate. When you have spent years being underestimated, the natural desire is to prove everyone wrong. You want to explain what they failed to see. You want to remind them of every time they doubted you. You want to make them understand that they were wrong about your potential. But this desire can become a trap. If you spend your entire life trying to prove yourself to people who doubted you, then they continue controlling your direction. Every achievement becomes a message to them. Every success becomes an attempt to gain their recognition. Every victory becomes incomplete until they acknowledge it. You must eventually outgrow the need for them to understand. Let your results speak, not because you need everyone to notice, but because you no longer longer need to explain. There is a quiet confidence in allowing time to reveal the truth. You do not need to respond to every accusation. You do not need to defend every decision. You do not need to argue with people who have already decided what they want to believe. Continue working, continue improving, continue moving in the direction you have chosen. Time has a way of exposing the difference between temporary performance and permanent transformation. A person can pretend to be disciplined for a week. They can pretend to be confident for a day. They can pretend to be successful for a moment. But consistency eventually reveals what is real. This is why you should become more interested in building than announcing. Every day you spend talking about what you will do is a day that could have been spent doing it. Every hour spent defending your potential is an hour that could have been spent developing it. You do not need to convince people that you are capable. Become capable. You do not need to convince people that you are strong. Develop strength. You do not need to convince people that you are worthy of respect. Live in a way that makes your own respect for yourself impossible to ignore. Your life should become the evidence. Let people remember the old version of you if they want to. Let them believe you will never change. Let them assume you are still the person who accepted everything, tolerated everything, and remained available to everyone. You do not need to correct their assumptions. The person who is truly changing does not need to constantly announce the change. They're too busy living it. One day people will notice the difference. They will notice that you no longer react the way you used to. They will notice that you no longer chase the same people. They will notice that your standards have changed. They will notice that your silence is no longer insecurity but self-control. They will notice that your absence is no longer temporary but intentional, and perhaps they will ask what happened. You do not need to give them a speech. Your life has already answered the question. This is the power of letting your results speak. You stop wasting energy trying to make people believe in a future they cannot yet see. You stop arguing with people who judge you based on your past. You stop announcing your next move to people who have no role in creating it. You simply continue quickly, consistently, fattedly. The world may ignore your effort while it is still invisible. It may overlook your discipline while it is still developing. It may underestimate your potential while you are still struggling to reach it, but the world has a difficult time ignoring results that continue to grow. So stop talking about the person you are going to become. Become that person. Stop announcing your next move. Make it stop trying to prove that you are changing. Change, and when the results finally appear, do not waste your energy explaining how hard it was to create them. Let the life you built stand in silence, stronger than every promise you ever made, louder than every doubt you ever faced, and impossible to dismiss because the proof is no longer in your words but in everything you have become. Your silence was the preparation, your discipline was the foundation, and your results are the answer to everyone who thought you would remain the same.